Kitchen scraps that usually end up in the trash can transform into a continuous supply of fresh onions using methods that most gardeners have never considered. Supermarket onions often stop producing after one regrowth cycle, yet certain unconventional techniques can extend their productivity for months. Standard regrowth instructions found online rarely mention these approaches, leaving gardeners frustrated when their onion bottoms rot or produce weak, flavorless shoots. 5 unusual methods exist that commercial growers quietly use but home gardeners rarely discover. Techniques involving unexpected materials, counterintuitive timing, and simple modifications that dramatically change results. These aren't the typical put an onion bottom in water instructions that everyone already knows. Understanding why conventional regrowth fails helps explain why these alternative approaches work so effectively, transforming what seems like garbage into a renewable food source that keeps producing far longer than expected. Most regrowth tutorials show onion bottoms sitting in shallow water, which works initially but leads to rot within 2 weeks because the cut surface never properly heals and remains vulnerable to bacterial infection. The water method creates a perfect environment for anaerobic bacteria that break down tissue faster than roots can establish, especially when room temperature exceeds 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Onions naturally store nutrients in their base to survive dormancy, but cutting exposes these reserves to contamination before the plant can mobilize them for new growth. Another common issue involves using onions that were treated with sprout inhibitors, chemicals applied by commercial distributors to extend shelf life, but which interfere with root development even after the onion is cut. Organic onions generally perform better for regrowth, though even these face challenges when the growing environment doesn't match their biological needs. Temperature fluctuations, inadequate light, and poor air circulation all contribute to failure rates that make gardeners abandon the practice entirely. The 5 methods below address these specific problems through unconventional solutions. The first unusual technique involves planting onion bottoms upside down in soil, which sounds counterintuitive but leverages the plant's natural geotropism, the ability to sense gravity and orient growth accordingly. When positioned with the cut surface facing down and roots pointing upward, the onion must work harder to reorient itself, which triggers stronger root development and more robust shoot formation compared to standard planting. This method works because the struggle to correct orientation causes the plant to allocate more energy to structural growth, creating thicker stems and deeper root systems. Use a 6 to 8 inch pot filled with well-draining potting mix. Bury the onion bottom 2 inches deep with the root plate facing up and water sparingly. Moisture should reach roots without saturating the healing cut surface. Within 5 to 7 days, shoots emerge and curve upward naturally, while roots establish strongly. This technique particularly benefits storage onions that have begun sprouting, as the inverted position prevents premature bolting and extends the harvest window by 3 to 4 weeks compared to conventional planting. Soaking onion bottoms in a 5% vodka solution for exactly 12 minutes before planting creates a mild stress response that accelerates root emergence and reduces fungal contamination by 60–70% compared to untreated specimens. The alcohol concentration must be precise. Too weak provides no benefit. Too strong damages tissue. Mix 1 tablespoon of 40% vodka with 4 tablespoons of room temperature water. Submerge only the root plate area, then remove and plant immediately in moist soil without rinsing. This works because ethanol temporarily disrupts the waxy cuticle that seals cut surfaces, allowing beneficial soil microbes to colonize before pathogenic fungi establish, while simultaneously triggering ethylene production that signals dormancy break. Research on bulb crops shows alcohol treatment at low concentrations stimulates auxin production, a hormone essential for root initiation. After planting, roots typically appear within 48 to 72 hours rather than the usual 5 to 7 days. This method proves especially effective with onions that sat in storage for months and show reluctance to break dormancy through standard approaches. Creating a false bottom using gravel or marbles in a glass jar establishes an air gap that prevents the onion base from sitting directly in water, the primary cause of rot in conventional regrowth setups. Fill a wide-mouth jar with 1 inch of aquarium gravel or glass marbles. Add water until it barely touches the top of the gravel layer. Then position the onion bottom so roots can reach through to moisture while the cut surface remains completely dry. This configuration provides humidity without contact, allowing the wound to callus properly over 3 to 4 days before roots penetrate to the water below. The air gap maintains oxygen availability at the root zone, preventing anaerobic conditions that encourage bacterial soft rot. Change water every 3 days to prevent algae buildup and maintain dissolved oxygen levels. Onions grown this way produce shoots 40% thicker than those grown in direct water contact and can be harvested for green onions repeatedly for 8 to 10 weeks before exhausting nutrient reserves. The method works year-round indoors, but produces best results near a south-facing window where shoots receive 4 to 6 hours of indirect light daily. Burying onion bottoms in a 50-50 mix of coarse sand and peat moss creates the ideal moisture balance and prevents rot while encouraging exceptionally strong root development compared to soil or water methods. Fill a shallow tray 3 inches deep with the sand-peat mixture. Moisten until it feels like a wrung-out sponge. Then press onion bottoms halfway into the medium with cut surfaces facing up to promote air exposure during healing. Cover the tray loosely with plastic wrap to maintain humidity at 70–80% and place in indirect light at 60–65 degrees, cooler than typical room temperature, which slows top growth while prioritizing root establishment. This technique mimics the conditions bulbs experience during natural spring emergence when soil is cool and consistently moist but never waterlogged. After 10–14 days, well-developed root systems form and shoots appear. At this stage, transplant to individual pots or into the garden. The sand provides excellent drainage and aeration, while peat retains just enough moisture to prevent desiccation. This approach yields onions that produce 2–3 times more green shoots per harvest cycle because the robust root system can support more aggressive top growth. Refrigerating onion bottoms at 35–40 degrees for exactly 21 days before planting breaks. Dormancy more effectively than any other home method, essentially mimicking winter conditions that signal spring growth is safe to begin. Wrap each onion bottom loosely in a paper towel, place in a perforated plastic bag to allow air exchange, and store in the vegetable crisper drawer where temperature remains constant. This cold treatment synchronizes internal biochemistry, converting stored starches to sugars that fuel rapid growth once warmth returns, while simultaneously triggering enzyme systems that initiate root formation. After the chilling period, plant immediately in soil or begin the water method. Roots often appear within 36 hours compared to the usual week-long wait. This technique proves particularly valuable with onions that came from warm climates or were stored improperly, as it resets their growth cycle and overcomes inhibition. Commercial onion producers use similar cold treatments to force uniform sprouting in field plantings. The method requires patience, but produces the strongest, most productive regrowth of all 5 techniques, with plants often yielding harvestable green onions for 12 to 16 weeks. These 5 techniques can be combined for even better results. For example, using vodka treatment followed by sand-peat incubation creates both antifungal protection and optimal root development. Different onion varieties respond differently. Yellow storage onions work best with refrigeration stratification. Red onions benefit most from the upside-down method, and white onions excel in the double-bottom jar setup. Experimentation reveals which approach suits available materials and growing conditions. All methods share common requirements: clean cuts made with sanitized knives, room temperature above 60 degrees for active growth, and patience during the initial establishment period when nothing visible happens. The key advantage these unusual techniques offer over standard methods is longevity. Instead of 2 or 3 harvests before exhaustion, properly managed regrown onions can produce for months, essentially becoming a renewable crop that requires no seed purchase and minimal space. Cost analysis shows that one onion bottom yielding 15 to 20 green onion harvests over 4 months provides equivalent value to purchasing 6 to 8 bunches from the store, representing savings of $15 to $25 depending on local prices. The most important factor remains starting with healthy, untreated onions and providing consistent care rather than expecting immediate results. Kitchen waste transforms into productive crops when the right techniques replace conventional wisdom that rarely accounts for the biological needs of regrowing bulbs. These 5 methods, upside-down planting, vodka treatment, double-bottom jars, sand peat incubation, and cold stratification, address specific failure points in standard regrowth approaches and extend productivity far beyond what most gardeners expect from onion scraps. Try one method this week and compare results to previous attempts. Success often comes from matching technique to specific onion variety and household conditions, rather than assuming one approach works universally.